Today, I've got 3 more Baldurs Gate 3 multi-class builds for you to try out. The theme for these builds is synergy. You know, classes that go together like peanut butter and jay, or salt and pepper, or like me and Karlach. All right, let's go. Let me know in the comments any classes you would like me to multi-class in this sort of a style. We're going to start off with the Storm Warden first. Now, if you like to get wet, then maybe you also like lightning. Wow. Maybe not, I don't know. But if you wet a target and then deal lightning damage to it, it will deal double lightning damage. Now, there are 2 classes that combine perfectly into this like wet Storm Warden lightning theme class that just blends so well together. So essentially the focus here is on the Sorcerer and the Tempest Cleric, and you'll be using the Sorcerer's meta magic to cast 2 spells in 1 turn, or 1 if you've already wet the ground, but you'll use it initially first to cast water on the ground, and then you'll use a lightning spell to ignite that water and electrocute it, but also deal double damage to anyone standing in it. And then you can combine this with things like Destructive Wrath to make sure you always deal maximum damage, or even any of the reactions you get from the Sorcerer, so you can just deal an insane amount of damage with this build, just focusing on Sorcerer and the Tempest Cleric, which we are using here, but also that lightning damage. So to put this build together, you're really starting off as the Sorcerer. You can start off if it's the Cleric if you want those extra proficiencies, but essentially you want the first couple of levels of the Sorcerer to get that meta magic and grab things like Careful Spell and Quicken Spell and those benefits there. And then we're really just grabbing 2 levels of the Tempest Cleric. Now, the main reason that we're only grabbing 2 is because then you get Destructive Wrath. So when you roll Thunder or Lightning damage, you can use your Channel Divinity to deal maximum damage instead. So essentially what that means is, you know how you look at every attack and it says it's going to do, 8 to 20 damage, whatever, you use that Channel Divinity and it just will deal maximum damage. You combine that with a wet target, it's going to absolutely shred enemies because it's going to deal double damage on top of that maximum damage. So it's really beneficial, and I've decided to go with the Storm Sorcerer here as it just kind of fits this build, but you can go, say, the Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer to get a little bit of extra damage around that route. As you're sort of leveling up here, you will be putting most of your points into Sorcerer and grabbing really any of the lightning spells here and anything else that you want to pick up. For your feats, I would be grabbing Ability Improvement to make sure your Charisma is maxed out for your overall damage. I'd also grab the Elemental Adept for lightning, so your spells cast ignore resistances to lightning damage. So, if something is, say, resistant to lightning damage, they no longer are, so they're still going to get that amazing amount of damage from your lightning spells, which is going to be your main focus here, and you can't roll a 1 on any lightning damage, so you always just deal that little bit extra. Now, as you level out your Sorcerer as well, you'll gain those additional benefits like the Wrath of the Storm and everything else. And when you're looking at sort of spells and stuff to pick up, but really like the benefit for this build is it's very easy to come together and it doesn't require a whole lot of gear in order to succeed. Luckily though, there is some really solid gear that you can combine this with. Some of that early to mid game like lightning charge gear you get in sort of Act 1, Act 2 that adds lightning charges you can use. So when you have a lightning charge, you will deal additional lightning damage, and once you gain 5 charges, they can be consumed to deal additional, even more lightning damage. So there's benefits there as well if you wanted to combo it with some gear, but for the most part, the build succeeds without it, right? You just need to throw some water on someone and then spray them with lightning and it will just destroy them. There isn't much else to say here. And then you can sort of tinker with, say, maybe a little bit of a dip into Wizard if you want to get a little bit more spells or a little bit more flair, but I just don't think it's needed, right? You really just need to use that meta magic to quicken a spell, cast some water on the ground, and then just spam lightning spells at them, and that's it. Like, that's the whole build. All right, on to the next one. Raging Bear is a Barbarian and Moon Druid combo. Now, I really wanted to do something with Karlach and the Barbarian in general, as Barbarians aren't particularly great at multi-classing. I've said that in a couple of videos, but obviously you can just go like the classic fighter and get Action Surge and that sort of a thing, and it's like, yeah, that's cool and all, but it's kind of boring. But I wanted to do something a little unique, and this is an interesting way to keep with, say, the theme of one of the Barbarian subclasses, but then also make the Moon Druid just a tiny little bit better. So essentially what we're doing here is we're grabbing mostly Druid because we're going Moon Druid to really get into that combat wild shape aspects. Now, a downside of combat wild shape is that you lose essentially like everything that you're, say, equipping and all that sort of like benefits when you are wild shaped. One thing that doesn't get rid of though is any of, say, your rage benefits. Now, a downside to the Barbarian is that you can't use any spells when you have Raged. And it's the same thing really with a Moon Druid when you have Wild Shape. So these combo well together. So say if you wanted to use spells, then you don't have Rage or Wild Shape active, and out of combat spells, that sort of thing you can use. But in combat, what you can do is you can Rage and then Wild Shape, and your Rage buff will actually last through your Wild Shape. And what we're doing here as a way to combine this is we're using the Bear Heart Rage, which will give you a buff to your resistances and essentially make you resistant to all types of damage except Psychic. So then when you've got that active and then you Wild Shape into another form, your Wild Shape's going to last significantly longer. And if you go to something, say like a bear, you can goat targets into attacking you, which will then obviously do less damage. But then you can even use other things, right? Like say, you know, the owlbear or any of the other Wild Shape forms. The benefit to this on top of that though is something that you can do is combine this with the Tavern Brawler feat. So essentially what that does is when you make an unarmed attack, you can add your strength to that attack twice. Now, when you're Wild Shaped, those attacks are unarmed attacks. So you will actually get that strength modifier being added twice. So the one thing to consider here is when you're Wild Shaping, you want to make sure you Wild Shape into a creature that has a high amount of strength. The owlbear is great as it has 20 strength. So that means an extra 5 for those attack rolls. So essentially the way the combat encounter goes here is at the start of the encounter, you will Rage, you'll get those benefits from your Bear Heart. And then on that next turn, you'll use that combat Wild Shape. You have to start combat in your human form because you want to get that Rage off. The downside to that is that you kind of waste that first turn. This build needs that first turn to get going. But once you've got that and you've actually switched forms, you are going to see a huge amount of success in that Wild Shape form. And it just gives you a little bit more benefits to Wild Shaping. You know, one of the downsides of the Druid is that they just aren't great, especially the Wild Shape Druids are just better options, and this gives you a little bit more juice to that sort of a form. But I think it also combos well with this sort of a setup, as you can then switch into those forms, and you've got sort of Barbarian that you can fall back on if you wanted to go that route, and even spells, right, if you are in your human form, so you've got that route as well. The last build we're going to call the Slayer, and this is a Bard Fighter combo, and this almost made it into my last 3 multi-class builds, as it does focus a lot on the synergies with dealing a lot of attacks per turn. But I felt like 3 was a better number for a video title, so I kept this one for this video, so sue me. But anyway, so what this is it's a Bard and Fighter combo, and the reason we're combining these is because the Fighter is just a great class to dip into for any multi-classing because of Action Surge, and we're leveraging that for this build, specifically for Slashing Flourish. So when you go into the subclass College of Swords, you get access to these like weapon arts for the Bard, and one of them is the Slashing Flourish, which can be used for melee or ranged attacks, and it will allow you to attack up to 2 enemies at once. Now, because you also get an extra attack in just a standard turn, this will allow you to attack 4 times essentially, right? Because you can attack 2 enemies at once, and then with that extra attack, you can do that again, so that's 4 times. Now you combo that with the Action Surge from Fighter, and that makes it 8 attacks in that one turn. Now, what's really great about this build is it's so versatile, as it's both a melee and a ranged build, and because we are going the College of Swords, you get to pick a fighting style, which we're obviously going dueling here, which will then allow you to add 2 extra damage to any of those attacks we're using with, say, a rapier or those sort of weapons. And then on top of that, because we're going Fighter, you get access to another fighting style, which you can then go Archery, so which will then add 2 extra damage to all of your ranged attacks. So you've got a bow that deals extra damage, you've got a sword that deals extra damage, you can then attack 8 times in the one turn with all of that extra damage stacking on top of each other. So it's just another like really great combo to combine together to deal heaps of damage. So we're picking out 4 levels of the fighter here, and we're probably for the subclass we're going to go champion. I toyed around with potentially going like Eldritch Knight because you get like the spell level, and then also you could grab some extra spells, but because they're using intelligence as a spell casting modifier and we're not a intelligence based class like at all, it just didn't really seem that beneficial. So we ended up going champion, mainly because the champion subclass feat that will improve your critical hit, so you get that additional benefit, and because we're attacking so many times, you got a much higher percentage chance of rolling those critical hits, so you get the benefits from that as well. We're going 4 in Fighter here to get that extra feat, and then same for Bard, we're going 8 to get that extra feat. And in the Bard line here, we are going obviously the College of Swords, and in terms of the spells you want to pick up, you can grab anything you like that really supplements this build, but we're mainly focusing on those martial attacks with this combo, but then you've got those backups to spells if you want to use them. Not overly much to say about feats here, really just grab the ability improvement. I'm actually making this build build a strength build using the Titan string bow, as it's a fantastic bow to use, which I didn't mention before. So that obviously uses strength. So we are using strength here as this general build setup, but that's up to you. You can go dexterity. There's completely nothing wrong with that. Obviously you get more AC and you get the benefits from that. You could do something similar to this build with the Thief's Rogue's extra bonus action for attacking and like using 2 hand crossbows to like get that extra like offhand attack. Maybe there's something there that I might play around with in a different build, but let me know what you think of this series. I might keep this going for a little bit and just like combining a couple of like 3 different multi-class builds that I've been tinkering with, and maybe we'll do like some class specific ones or something. I'm really interested to know what you guys think about these, so let me know in the comments. But thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.